help us de-escalate this tension? All right, the lines are open. Let's go to Hassan on the line from Slough. Welcome, Hassan.
Hi, assalamu alaikum. And salams to the Muslim listeners and shalom to our Jewish brethren who are listening. And that is actually the solution there. It's the peace that both faiths actually promote. And on Abrahamic principles, the more that unites us than divides us. It's politics that's dividing us, and it's our faith that will unite us. And when we last spoke about this, I was very happy when a couple of the Arab countries recognized the state of Israel, or on the way to recognizing, because peace would have finally broken out. But that seems to be crumbling now. I've had a look at the Hamas charter, and I think one of the main problems is that Hamas needs to recognize the state of Israel. On the very first page of the charter, it gives a quote from Hassan al-Banna, who formed the Muslim Brotherhood, and he says, Israel will rise and will remain erect until Islam eliminates it, as it has eliminated its predecessors. And in Article 12, it talks about waging jihad against enemies. And I think that is one of the roots of the problems. It needs to recognize the state of Israel. Jews are not enemies, they're brethren.
Hassan, what would you say? And clearly, we know what we think of terrorism, and in particular, you as a regular caller, I know that you work actively against terrorism, and I thank you for that. But what would you say to the response on the other side, and not Hamas, but just generally Palestinian people who'd say to you, but Israel doesn't recognise Palestine at this stage?
Well, it's never said no to a Palestinian state, and I think talks were underway where Gaza and I think East Jerusalem were going to be under the Palestinian state. So they've never said no, and that's all the more reason why peaceful negotiations do need to be rekindled. What's happening now is not going to solve the problem. And I think Muslims and Palestinians should not be afraid to call out their own leadership, Hamas. And what has Hamas actually done to protect their own people? Israel, at least the government, is trying to protect its own citizens by building underground bunkers. Hamas did build underground networks, but not to house human beings, to house missiles. So, and the other thing is, on the Israeli side, there are things they've done wrong. So when the police attacked the compound of Al-Aqsa, I did watch the video. It was quite disturbing to see that. And also the fact that 1 million Israelis have to go underground to protect themselves from the barrage of Hamas rockets. That's not good either. What was very interesting was that Hamas seems to have a more advanced rocketry system. Do
you know where they got those from?
Probably Iran.
It is
maybe.
Iran. No, it is Iran. That's where
it is Iran.
Yeah. Some of them are built. The smaller ones are built inside Gaza, the very small ones. But the missiles that are state level capability missiles, they have been provided to them by Iran.
And the fact that they've accumulated over 1,000 of those missiles, it shows that it was probably a planned attack. They've been planning this for a long time, which falls in line with their charter of eliminating Israel. Hence the excuse of the eviction notice. I think it's probably just an excuse, that they've been planning this for a long time, it seems to me. The final point is, I'd like your opinion on something. It's not something I've been able to verify. But I heard this opinion that states that Mahmoud Abbas, he is actually using Israel to do his dirty work for him by eliminating the Hamas commanders so that he can win subsequent elections. I have not verified this, but I'd like your take on that.
Not looked at the specifics of that, though I did make the general point that you would have heard that a lot of this is about domestic positioning. Hamas is attempting to eclipse Fatah as the domestic leadership for Palestinians. Now, I would want to caveat one thing, and that is that, again, Hamas is the otherwise political wing of their terrorist military wing. And they have a direct connection with their terrorist military wing. There's no separation between them. The Hamas leadership controls both the political and the terrorist side, and there's a unification of their leadership, pretty much like Hezbollah as well. With that caveat out of the way, one of the things associated with Islamist organizations is a lack of corruption in governance, economic corruption I'm referring to here. And unfortunately with Fatah, as with most secular leadership across the Arab world, the concern among populations is that the leadership has been inept in providing economically for their population and regenerating their cities and siphoning off a lot of the money. And that same dynamic, by the way, is playing out between Taliban factions versus the Afghan government. So it doesn't surprise me me that this internal power struggle would be going on because they're vying for position as to who becomes the future leadership for Palestinian people. And it really does break my heart that there isn't currently, I do not see an alternative voice emerging from within the West Bank or Gaza. Well, Gaza, you can understand why, because they'd be suffocated from speaking, but especially the West Bank, to have an alternative, reasonable Palestinian voice emerging outside of Hamas. And Fatah have completely, that is where I do pin the blame on them, they have failed to provide a successor in leadership from Arafat onwards.
Yes, yeah.
It is really tragic. All right, Hassan, we've got to go, but thank you very much.